Continuing second part of Marx's chapter on the expropriation of agricultural population. Legislation was terrified at this revolution. It did not yet stand on the height of civilization where the wealth of a nation, i.e. the formation of capital, and the reckless exploitation of the impoverishing of the masses of people, figure as the ultima thule of the statecraft. In his History of Henry VII, Bacon says, enclosures at that time, 1489, began to be more frequent, whereby arable land, which could not be manured without people and families, was turned into pasture, which was easily rid by a few herdsmen, and tenancies for years, lives, and at will, whereupon much of the yeomanry lived, were turned into demences. Interesting side note, Thomas Paine wrote a book, Agricultural Justice, right? And also Thomas Jefferson wrote of America as a land for yeomans, right? So they had in memory this movement, right? This displacement from the land, and saw America as a place where people could be on the land again. 3 or 4 acres, right? You did some labor, you feed your family, you're a free person. You offer your labor freely. It's the only way capitalism works. Right now we don't have capitalism because we have some horror story where everybody has to sell their labor for the lowest price because otherwise you die. There's no freedom when your choices are do a terrible thing or die. It's not a free choice. Continuing on. This bred a decay of people, and by consequence a decay of towns, churches, tithes, and the like. Right? Fewer people were starving to death, right? Towns, churches, tithes, all these things disappeared. People went to the city trying to find work, and of course we know that the lifespan went down from people living into their 70s during the Middle Ages to people living in their 20s if they're lucky under capitalism as proletariat. Continuing on. In remedying of this inconvenience, the king's wisdom was admirable, and the parliament at the time, they took a course to take away depopulating enclosures and depopulating pastures. An act of Henry VII, 1489, cap 19, forbade the destruction of all houses of husbandry, to which at least 20 acres of land belonged. By an act 25 Henry VIII, the same law was renewed. It re-cities, among other things, that many farms and large flocks of cattle, especially of sheep, were concentrated in the hands of a few men, whereby the rest of the land has much risen and tillage has fallen off. Churches and houses have been pulled down, and marvelous numbers of people have been deprived of the means wherein to maintain themselves and their families. There we go, right? Henry VII, Henry VIII, through their laws, made sure that everybody that still had land had at least 20 acres. Today, in America, it's even worse, right? Our farmers have thousands of acres. The horrific direction of capitalism. The act, therefore, ordains the rebuilding of the decayed farmsteads and fixes a portion between corn land and pasture land, etc. The Act of 1533 recites that some owners possess 24,000 sheep and limits the number to be owned at 2,000. The cry of the people in the legislation directed for 150 years after Henry VII against the expropriation of the small farmers and peasants were alike fruitless. The secret of their inefficiency, Bacon, without knowing it, reveals to us. And this is Bacon. The device of King Henry VII, says Bacon in his Essay Civil and Moral, Essay 29, was profound and admirable in making farms and houses of husbandry of the standard, that is, maintained with such proportion of land unto them as may breed a subject to live in convenient plenty, and no servile condition, and to keep the plough in the hands of the owners and not mere hirelings. What the capital system demanded was, on the other hand, a degraded and almost servile condition of the mass of people, the transformation of them into mercenaries, and of their means of labor into capital. There we go. So, if you're a peasant proprietor or a laborer with 4 acres and access to the commons, you sold your labor at free, right? If somebody weren't from a state of freedom, somebody didn't pay enough, you just didn't sell it. You stayed, I just eat some of my corn, right, that I grew. Maybe hunt something on the common land, warm my house with the sticks I grabbed this year. But if you're paying more, I'll come and I'll help labor your large estate. Now, being moved off, they're all large estates. They stole your land, your 4 acres, gave it to somebody that had at least 20. They stole your 2 or 3 sheep and gave it to somebody that had hundreds, right? The direction of monopolization is already there before capitalism, at the end of the peasant era. During this transformation period, legislation also strove to retain the 4 acres of land by the cottage of the agricultural wage laborers, and forbade them to take lodgers into his cottage. In the reign of James I, 1627, Roger Crocker of Front Mill was condemned for having built a cottage on a manor of Front Hill without 4 acres of land attached to the same in perpetuity. As late as Charles I's reign in 1638, a royal commission was appointed to enforce the carrying out of the old laws, especially that referring to the 4 acres of land. Even in Cromwell's time, the building of a house within 4 miles of London was forbidden, unless it was endowed with 4 acres of land. As late as the first half of the 18th century, complaint is made if the cottage of the agricultural labor was not an adjunct of 1 or 2 acres of land. Nowadays, he is lucky if he is furnished with a little garden, or if he may rent far away from his cottage a few roods. Landlords and farmers, says Dr. Hunter, work here hand in hand. A few acres in the cottage would make the laborers too independent. There we go. So the ideal, right? Do you own land? And I do mean own it, because people who own land don't pay taxes. They don't pay to a bank. Okay, so that's enough for today. So as you can see, whatever your thoughts on what became Marxism, capitalism, communism, this historical section is quite important, right? Continue on. It'll be a bit breaking these down to smaller sections and talking about them while we do. Even this this one chapter on the expropriation of the agricultural populations from their land, of the peasants, transforming them. It goes, we're on page 782, we'll go up to 805 in this version. So, pretty cool old book. Pretty cool translation. Have a blessed day.